Okay, 2004 Montana wheel bearing change. So get the wheel off, jacked up, and first thing I have to do is take the caliper off because the rotor comes off because the bearing, gotta undo this nut and the bearing's back there with 3 bolts behind there. So this rotor comes off, but you can't do that till the brake caliper's off. But there's a bracket and a caliper. So you just take the bracket bolts off and take the bracket and caliper full assembly right off, hang it up with a bungee, get that started first. Because my wrists are computer wrists, I need some extra torque. So a long socket, 15, go to a 1/2-inch drive and put an extender tube on it. And just reef on it, and I was able to break it loose on both sides. So 2 15mm bolts, and bungee up the caliper so it doesn't put stress on the brake line. And now the rotor, I can whack it off. So for the nut, right here, it's a 34. So break that off with a nice good breaker bar. Well, I've been banging and banging, and I heated it up a couple of times all the way around in here to loosen it up. And I've been banging on this side all the way around and then on the back all the way around just to break it loose, but it's not coming off. So I have to give it some really serious force. So what I'm going to do is use a body shop hammer, but the handle broke a long time ago, but this thing's a useful tool still. I'm going to go and whack it really hard around here to break it loose and use this other hammer to hit it. But I was looking for my sledge, but we'll just use this. Well, it never fails. Nice sledgehammer. But I had to bang around here and then on the edge of there and the edge of the back and keep going until it just got a tiny bit loose, and then just keep going until it's got loose like this. But yeah, there's a lot of like dented metal, right, from really whacking on it, but it's still all right. Anyway, that's the first hurdle. So because this bolt is so tight and this 3-foot breaker bar is bending a lot when I push on it, I've decided to put some penetrating oil like all around the outside, all around the thread. I'll go in and eat something real quick and come back and keep reefing on it. So pulling up instead of pushing down and putting lots of penetrating oil in there did the job just fine, and it came off just great. So now is a 13mm, 3 of them for the bearing, and the best way is a thin extension to get around the boot and everything, and a little torque extension, and a top bolt, a little bit longer extension seems to be better. So it rained while I was gone. It's funny how it gets rusty. It wasn't like that. Anyway, so I had to get this. So I have to pull this thing off, so I have to use a puller. Okay, so just before I actually use it, get it all set up and ready to crank. So now that's all loose, but the actual bearing hub has to be banged off until it comes off. Okay, now it just got loose enough for me to pull it off. So this little bracket here, I gotta be careful with that. Slide this all out. So the old bearing, the speed sensor electronics have completely separated, and they're still stuck in there, so I've had to pry things out, but this is pressure fitted in there, and banging it from behind is difficult and dangerous. So I've been trying to pull it out of the front. So I loosened it from the front by banging in the front, bending the metal in a little bit, and then went from behind with a screwdriver and carefully banged it and popped this out. And now we're good. So before this can slide in and fit in properly, this has to be smoothed out, sanded, cleaned, so it fits in nicely. So step one, I can take a belt sand or a piece of sandpaper and it'll fit in there real nice, and I just rotate it around. Of course I gotta use two hands, but I hold this in the middle and then I rotate it around and sand everything, clean it up. Of course, before I'm done, the gear has to be very clean before I slide anything back together on here. So these grooves for the gear are all clean and nice and dirt free. So that sandpaper is very smooth to the touch now. And so if I just put a tiny little bit of lubricant on there, and it'll fit in real nice. And of course I got to clean this perfectly and clean that out really nice, and a tiny bit of grease on there so that we don't get grinding gears. And then I can press everything on, put it together. The only thing is this thing barely fits, so you have to push this way out of the way to get that cable in first before you can push it all the way in. So to get it pristinely clean, I'm going to be just using a screwdriver and putting some shop towel on top of the screwdriver and just go in every groove and get it perfectly clean. So just a teeny weeny bit of white lithium grease there and in there, and I'm ready to assemble. So there, it's all pushed on. This is pulled through. Again, you got to push the shaft in a little bit while you're holding this almost pushed on. Enough room to get your finger and to push the thread through. And then you got to remember this bracket. But anyway, everything will shift and turn easily like this to line up the bolts. And then you start threading the bolts. Off we go. So I did the top one first, but nice and loose, because you want to be able to have play and everything while you're feeding and threading all the other bolts. So once everything's threaded and really nice, then everything can get snugged up. Okay, bolts are all tight. The speed sensor been reassembled, clipped in. Really double check to make sure it's really snug, it's not going to come out. So now it's blue Loctite and torquing up this nut to the exact torque spec, because bearing wear all depends on torquing this nut up perfectly on the hub. So I just put a little bit of blue back in there about where the nut would go, not on the shaft, well on the shaft, but back in there. Put the nut on, ratchet it on until it won't turn, and then time to torque it, 118 foot-pounds. So a little white lithium on there just to stop it from corroding, and clean that out a little bit. Pop the rotor. So before I put the brake on, I'm going to do a little acetone. That's a tiny little bit of grease, so just clean it perfectly. And just before I bring this down and try to fit it on, it'll be kind of hard because the caliper and the pads and everything and the bracket are all one assembly right now. So I'm going to put a little bit of white lithium right on the end there so it threads more easily when I'm trying to jiggle it around and fit it in place. So there's the acetone, got it nice and clean, there's no grease, it's time to put it together. Okay, caliper is on, all snugged up. Put the wheel on, jack her down, tighten her up. It's not so bad. Could do another side, but it's 4:45, so I started late, so I'll do the other one later.